They never saw us coming. These were the adrenaline-charged words whispered among American airmen as the largest stealth bombing raid in recent history unfolded under a cloak of silence. If that line already catches you off guard, you're in the right place. Today, we are diving deep into the electrifying reality behind one of the most audacious military operations of our time, Operation Midnight Hammer. What really happened that night? And how did a supposedly routine flight of heavy bombers on a nearly 18-hour trip catch an entire country off balance? In this episode, we're going to examine the clandestine planning, the high-tech illusions, and the intense international ramifications of this dramatic strike, as well as explore what it all means for the future of global stability. It might sound like something straight out of a spy novel, but rest assured, every aspect of what transpired reveals a carefully orchestrated and meticulously timed plan. In this script, we'll uncover how a cluster of attention-grabbing B-2 stealth bombers and their decoy cousins formed a trap so convincing that entire swaths of Iranian air defenses lay dormant at the worst possible moment for them. We'll look at what made these bomber pilots bet their lives on total elusiveness, and we'll break down how a submarine's full-time volley of Tomahawk missiles added a whole new layer of unpredictability. Ready to hear the story behind this unprecedented show of stealth? Buckle up. We're going to delve into the nerve-wracking countdown, discover how a decoy gambit turned into a masterstroke, and see precisely why the tension in the Middle East soared to new heights. Our first startling fact? The Americans deployed not one, not two, but 7 B-2 bombers in a single wave. That number equals an exponential growth in destructive potential, given that each bat-winged aircraft could carry gigantic bombs weighing 30,000 pounds apiece. The mission itself was kept so secretive that the majority of Washington's power players only discovered it through a late-night social media post from President Donald Trump. Though secrecy and stealth often go hand in hand with high-profile raids, what sets this event apart is the staggering complexity of the subterfuge. A second contingent of bombers, no less imposing, visibly soared in a completely different direction, lulling foreign observers into a false sense of clarity. With that decoy flight heading toward the Pacific, the real infiltration soared east, silent and nearly invisible. Now, let's rewind to the moments leading up to this massive strike. Tensions between the United States and Iran had been escalating for months, with whispers of a potential flashpoint growing louder day by day. American military networks buzzed with rumors of restricted protocols, intelligence briefings, and White House meetings behind closed doors. The night Operation Midnight Hammer began. Many insiders believed that the conflict might still be avoidable, but top brass in the Pentagon apparently knew otherwise. They recognized that if an attack order came, even at the last second, no delay would be acceptable. B-2 bombers placed on alert in Missouri were ready to mobilize before the final go was even given, reviewing flight trajectories and weapon configurations in exhaustive detail. Pilot rosters shifted into high gear, fueling an atmosphere as tense as a wound-up spring ready to snap. It became a waiting game. Precisely how would these ominous aircraft be deployed? Shortly after the mission was activated, the initial flight of B-2s took off with much fanfare, heading toward Guam in the Pacific Ocean. Satellites, intelligence analysts, and even civilian aviation enthusiasts turned their gaze to these behemoths lumbering across the sky. The world was primed to interpret that spectral show as confirmation. If the U.S. does indeed strike, it will come from the Pacific Corridor, observers surmised. But that was the ultimate misdirection. The real strike force had already formed in complete radio silence, traveling east, which seemed counterintuitive in a scenario dominating the Middle East. Yet it leveraged the planet's curvature, weather patterns, and meticulously calculated fueling points to remain almost invisible. It was a trick of illusions worthy of a grand illusionist, leaving watchers scouring the wrong horizon. What about refueling? Long-distance bomber missions may sound straightforward. Planes take off, planes land. But with thousands of miles to cross, specialized aerial tankers had to choreograph an intricate ballet high above the Earth's surface. Picture the tension of guiding giant aircraft with massive bombs attached, hooking into fueling booms, hurtling at high speed through frigid air. One small miscalculation could lead to a catastrophic explosion or fuel shortfall, which would have rendered the entire mission a failure. But given that everything from tanker scheduling to final approach angles was pre-planned, the B-2s took on their fuel in near total silence, finishing their mid-air top-up with chilling precision. Meanwhile, the decoy group soared onward, essentially playing a real-life game of cat and mouse with foreign intelligence. If you're finding this exhilarating, be sure to show some love and let me know if you're as riveted by the strategy as I am. While stealth bombers soared under the radar, American submarines under the shimmering moonscape launched over 24 Tomahawk missiles, targeting critical areas of Iran's defensive network. These missiles traveled low and fast, swooping in to degrade nuclear sites and confuse any defensive response before it could be mounted. Naval assets from the United States and the Persian Gulf and beyond remained on high alert, ready to scramble fighter jets or unleash additional missile salvos if Iranian forces regrouped swiftly. The result of this layered approach was devastating. Iranian radar operators found themselves dealing with an array of crisis points almost simultaneously. Did they focus on the newly incoming missile swarm, or should they track the fighter jets arrayed in front? And where exactly were the actual bombers? The assault's intensity and variety forced Iranian defenses to stall, allowing the stealth bombers to slip into attack formation with minimal interference. In the penultimate hours of Operation Midnight Hammer, tension inside Mission Control had escalated to a fever pitch. The flight commanders monitored every low whir, every data ping, every flicker of information on their HUDs, fully aware that discovery could be lethal. The B-2s carried destructive payloads specifically designed to penetrate hardened targets, so-called bunker busters, crucial for disabling protected nuclear infrastructure. Moments before releasing these massive bombs, pilots had to align with surgical precision, anticipating wind speed, local geography, and the structure of hidden facilities. Each pilot likely felt the enormous weight of their responsibility. Any miscalculation could cause disastrous collateral damage. The force of the bombs would be staggering, enough to reduce heavily fortified underground bunkers to twisted metal and scorched debris. Back home, in the Pentagon's hush-hush situation room, high-ranking officers kept their eyes on live updates transmitted through classified networks. General Dan Kane, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, stood watch. By the time the operation concluded, he joined a press briefing to announce, "Iran's fighters did not fly, and it appears that Iran's surface-to-air missile systems did not see us throughout the mission. We retained the element of surprise." Those words conveyed both pride and relief. With that near-perfect performance, one might wonder if American confidence surged to new heights that night. Yet the sense of triumph was tempered by a question no one dared say too loudly. What if Iran managed to conceal backup capabilities for a day when the element of surprise might be reversed? Even with the resounding success of the mission from a purely tactical perspective, the days that followed were shrouded in uncertainty. Reports varied regarding the condition of Iran's nuclear developments. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth expressed optimism, proclaiming the nuclear program was effectively devastated, though critics and analysts wondered if the Iranians might have reserved some capabilities. This question loomed large because nuclear enrichment programs can hide in unexpected places, from clandestine mountain facilities to labyrinthine networks beneath major cities. The cat-and-mouse dynamic in intelligence warfare remains unending, ensuring that, while a dramatic blow was struck, the possibility of undiscovered or quickly rebuilt infrastructure remained a pressing concern. Of course, the largest immediate question was whether Iran would retaliate, and how violently. As the dust settled, Gulf states braced themselves for blowback. They activated high alert systems in coordination with American forces, expecting reactions that could range from missile launches aimed at U.S. bases to sabotage attempts within their own territories. In the swirl of speculation, some experts argued that the severity of the surprise might leave Iranian leadership too staggered to respond right away. Others insisted that national pride would never allow Tehran to let such an affront pass unavenged. For residents of the region, the uncertainty fueled anxiety. Would critical infrastructure be hit by reprisal attacks? Would a new wave of refugees flood surrounding countries if conflict escalated further? Meanwhile, the White House projected a defiant stance. Senior officials insisted they did not seek a broader war. In the same breath, they promised a devastating secondary onslaught if Iran did indeed launch reprisal strikes. President Trump leveraged social media to emphasize that further aggression from Iran would be met with far greater force, though he stressed that private diplomatic channels remained open for negotiations. That combination of threat and offer mirrored a long-standing pattern in American foreign policy. Speak from a position of overwhelming strength, but leave a door, however small, ajar for peaceful resolution. The question became, Could those channels of dialogue survive intense international scrutiny? For a while, the entire region waited. Diplomatic circles buzzed with attempts at backdoor mediation. Some governments tried to parse the Pentagon's real intentions. Was this strike an isolated containment strategy aimed solely at Iran's nuclear sites, or the opening salvo of a more expansive campaign? For some leadership figures in the Middle East, these concerns overshadowed even domestic issues. If the conflagration spread, millions of innocent lives might be threatened. Talk about an extremely tense dynamic, right? When news of the stealth bomber's total success hit global headlines, citizens across the world took sides. Some heralded the operation as an essential step to prevent nuclear weapon development. Others condemned what they saw as an unprovoked show of aggression by a superpower. Protests erupted in various capitals, with demonstrators demanding transparency regarding the casualties and the lingering fallout on the Iranian populace. Meanwhile, certain American analysts questioned the national security payoff. Would this preemptive strike truly neutralize a future threat, or would it ferment more hostility toward the U.S. and its allies? Also, overshadowing the immediate success was a stark reality. Technology evolves, even as new conflicts arise. Critics of the mission warned that while a stealth-based approach works spectacularly well now, it might not remain so foolproof in the eventual future. Indeed, militaries worldwide constantly adapt to emerging technologies, looking to neutralize stealth with next-generation radar or drone-based surveillance. As arms races escalate, the notion that any one country could maintain lasting supremacy is questionable. Nonetheless, for the moment, the advantage belonged unmistakably to the United States, though the world waited anxiously for what form the next challenge might take. But how did it all feel for the individuals involved? According to leaked commentary from inside U.S. bases, the men and women operating at various levels, from loading the bombs onto the stealth planes to monitoring satellite feeds, experienced a roller coaster of emotions. Many saw the endeavor as a grave necessity, intending to forestall a nuclear arms race in a region already fraught with unrest. Others simply followed orders, trusting the chain of command. For the pilots especially, the knowledge that they'd embarked on the second-longest B-2 operation ever undertaken, exceeded only by the post-September 11th campaign, added both pride and weight to their roles. The psychological toll of flying into unknown territory, reliant on stealth systems that had never been tested quite so comprehensively, cannot be overstated. For those of you riveted by these behind-the-scenes revelations, do consider subscribing to stay in the loop. Future episodes will dive deeper into the ripple effects that might reshape entire geopolitical landscapes, ranging from energy markets to international alliances. After all, global tension has a funny way of altering everything from trade routes to airline travel patterns. So, how exactly did Iran fail to respond? The near-simultaneous arrival of multiple threats certainly contributed. Decoy flights of American fighter jets diligently scouted for any airborne reaction, drawing defensive eyes away from the critical infiltration path. By the time ground controllers realized a stealth presence might be looming, the bunkers were already under threat. If there's one takeaway from this night, it's that modern conflicts aren't restricted to linear battles or purely symmetrical showdowns. In the digital age, deception and speed can triumph spectacularly, at least momentarily. Yet, every advantage is ephemeral if adversary nations learn fast. Some Iranian sources claim that new detection systems had only recently arrived, but were not yet fully operational, meaning the U.S. picked the perfect window to strike. Still, rumors persist that Iran has begun funneling resources to alternative nuclear research facilities that remain undisclosed. The cat-and-mouse game, it appears, was never truly over. Even with the success of Operation Midnight Hammer, many experts brand the situation a strategic gamble. What if the unprecedented scale of this stealth assault compels Iran to accelerate a retaliatory project, or partner with outside powers to strengthen its air defenses? The unpredictability imbued in this equation is precisely what makes geopolitics such a jaw-dropping, white-knuckle ride. Inside U.S. intelligence circles, praise for the mission is intermingled with caution. Officials warn that immediate success can breed complacency, especially if it encourages riskier operations under tenuous assumptions of invincibility. Moreover, the cost of each B-2 sortie is astronomical, and these planes are anything but numerous. Replacing or repairing them after any sort of mishap can be a long, costly process. Additionally, the decision-making power required to give the green light for a raid of this magnitude rarely rests in the hands of a single individual. Interagency coordination, from the CIA to the Department of Defense, makes for lengthy debates, with hawkish and dovish factions lobbying in opposite directions. That this was pulled off so swiftly suggests either uncommonly streamlined communication or an extreme impetus behind the scenes, perhaps intelligence suggesting an imminent threat from Tehran. As the world watched, the resounding question became, how close did we come to a broader Middle East war? Experts point out that incidents like this often spark chain reactions. For instance, if Iranian leaders perceive the operation not just as an attack on nuclear facilities, but an assault on their national honor, they might respond unpredictably. There's also the possibility that allied militia groups within the region could carry out their own acts of reprisal, targeting U.S. allies without formal approval from Tehran, igniting a spark that branches into multiple flashpoints. This is a region already reeling from various proxy conflicts, so the introduction of yet another factor could create a tinderbox of epic proportions. Meanwhile, in the broader arena of international politics, the significance of this raid goes beyond U.S.-Iran relations. Russia and China are known to keep a close eye on American military innovations, possibly gleaning insights into stealth vulnerabilities and operational doctrines. Allies like NATO members may see the raid as proof of the unstoppable synergy between advanced technology and American commitment to protecting its interests. Detractors might see this show of force as polarizing, potentially fueling global tensions. One moment of clarity emerges: the complexities of modern conflict, where stealth aircraft, cyber warfare, misinformation, and political dialogue all swirl together, mean that even a decisive tactical victory is part of a bigger, uncertain puzzle. If there's a moral aspect to be extracted here, it's how leaps in technology have changed the face of warfare. Strategic illusions, such as dispatching a prominent group of aircraft toward Guam while a hidden batch soared the opposite way, underscore that brute force alone no longer wins the day. Instead, controlling perception is half the battle. The culminating moment, when bombs weighing tens of thousands of pounds hammered alleged nuclear facilities beneath Iranian soil, proves that illusions can be as potent as bombs if orchestrated effectively. Even so, illusions come with a moral dimension. Deception can sow distrust internationally, making diplomatic resolutions harder to achieve in the future. If a negotiated settlement was still possible, some wonder if that door has now slammed shut, at least for the near term. On the other hand, supporters of Operation Midnight Hammer argue that with the nuclear threat diminished, at least temporarily, diplomatic clarity might actually improve. Strange as it sounds, sometimes a decisive strike can compel parties to return to negotiations under a new sense of urgency. Which viewpoint is correct? Only time will tell. And time, as always, is the wild card. The days and weeks following this raid have felt like an extended pause before new tensions unfold. Numerous Middle Eastern governments remain fearful of a spillover effect, quietly hoping that back-channel communications will diffuse tensions before they escalate. The United States, for its part, has signaled readiness to either talk or fight, depending on Tehran's reaction. Iran, though seemingly silent immediately after the strike, might be building a legal or political case within international forums, or even rallying new alliances under the principle of self-defense. The silence is deceptive, a calm ocean concealing swirling undercurrents beneath the surface. So, what's next for Operation Midnight Hammer's legacy? Perhaps a second wave is hidden behind the scenes, or maybe cooler heads will guide us toward dialogue. One thing, however, seems certain: this daring infiltration has indelibly reshaped the strategic landscape. Whether that leads to fresh negotiations or a dangerous new chapter remains anyone's guess. In any case, you can be sure we'll continue to monitor and share the fascinating twists and turns in this unfolding story. If you're intrigued by the complexities and want to remain informed about further developments, consider dropping a quick like so more people can discover this analysis. Will Operation Midnight Hammer go down as a cautionary tale of risk-laden force, or a prime example of stealth dominance that halted a regional nuclear threat? The narrative is still in flux. What we do know is that it encapsulates, perhaps better than any recent event, the extremes of modern warfare, illusions that fooled entire defense networks, bombs so heavy they can topple massive fortifications, and a lightning-quick global reaction that underscored just how much is at stake whenever a major player decides to unleash its might. Even with all the conclusive statements from Washington, the tension simmers, the region stands on edge, and the world continues to watch with bated breath. After all, we've just witnessed what seemed impossible mere weeks ago, a monumental raid that left some of the world's most guarded facilities obliterated, without so much as a single recorded Iranian shot in response. Where does that leave us? Possibly on the brink of a new era, where stealth and deception overshadow raw numbers, and high-stakes gambles make or break national destinies. When we stand back and survey the entire constellation of events, initial decoy flights, prolonged stealth infiltration, Tomahawk missile barrages, and the widespread uncertainty of retaliation, one truth emerges: nobody is unaffected. From the armed forces who carried out the plan to the families in the Middle East, now wondering about their future, from the statesmen facing global pressure to average people halfway across the globe reading the news, every corner of the world can sense the aftershocks of an operation that, for better or worse, seems destined to define a chapter in modern geopolitical struggle. And that is exactly why stories like this one command our attention, stir our emotions, and keep us asking questions about power, responsibility, and the overwhelming possibilities and perils of unstoppable technology.